started by being a child of a fashion family. I mean, my father and all of his brothers were in the garment district, so I used to go to work with them and see the industry and get a sense of all of that. I grew up reading the trade paper, Women's Wear Daily, that he'd bring home from work every day. When I was in college, I joined a contest for Mademoiselle magazine, which was then one of the most important women's magazines. I won one of their coveted guest editorships of 20 students around the country, women who were brought into New York to edit their college issue, and that started my career, literally winning a contest and then working at the magazine. When I took my job as the director of the CFDA, I was hired at the end of March, and I hadn't quite started yet. I was going to, start in a couple of weeks, and during that time period was when there was Fashion Week, or Market Week as it was called in New York, and if there were 50 fashion shows, they were in 50 different locations. And Michael Kors had a show that week in a loft building downtown, and it was a raw concrete space, and when you turn on the loud bass music at fashion shows, everything just trembles because it's so loud. And the ceiling started to tremble, and lots of chunks of plaster started coming down on the runway, on the supermodels walking the runway, Linda, Cindy, Naomi, Claudia, all of them, and they just kept walking. And over the next couple of years, it was trying some temporary spaces nearby in the neighborhood at what's now the Millennium Hotel and was the Maclo at the time, until the fall of 1993, when we actually, in this park, Bryant Park, set up the first tents, and that was the first 7th on 6th. Which meant we moved 7th Avenue, the generic name of the garment and fashion industry, to 6th Avenue, where Bryant Park is located. And that was 18 years ago. By organizing the shows under the banner first of 7th on 6th and then various sponsor names till it's now the most current nomenclature for it is Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. It became the centralized focus for a platform for the American designers and the global designers around the world who come to New York to do business. And it brought together thousands and thousands of editors and press who'd never come to New York before, because there was never an organized outreach to them about what's going on, an organized calendar that made sense, organized registration, all sorts of things that for me just seemed like common sense to do in organizing something at a certain scale to make it all work and flow and sensible. And it changed the paradigm shift of fashion in the world. It really put America on quite equal footing with Paris and Milan, which it always was a stepchild to before that. It really put the American fashion universe on the global map. And it was a humongous seismic shift in fashion. Well, in 2000, I have to say Ravi Krishnan, who's the managing director of IMG in India, had done a lot of homework and had been checking out these fashion weeks, unbeknownst to me. I was not on board with IMG at the time, and came back and worked with helping to create and organize the FDCI and create a fashion week, seeing it as an opportunity and a platform for a creative industry. And truth is that IMG as a parent company, and IMG Fashion as it ultimately became known, acquired 7th on 6th in the summer of 2001. So IMG's first fashion week foray was in Mumbai before they even acquired us here in America. One of my first official tasks was getting over to India, because that summer was the next fashion week. And I came over, and it was my first trip to India in Mumbai, and the shows were at the Taj. And I remember, being somewhat terrified of going over there for my first fashion week, and I was not in good health at the time, but my doctor said, don't worry, I'd rather you be sick in India than in England. They were better doctors. And that was kind of surprising to me, but I said, okay. And I went over there, and I was blown away by what Ravi and the IMG team had actually pulled off. So I became enamored of India and the talent and the energy and the opportunity, and then became this somewhat unofficial godmother of Indian fashion. And it was the only fashion week in India at the time. It was Lakme Fashion Week, and working with Lakme and the IMG team there, and that began to grow and prosper, and then with my involvement and IMG's international exposure, we were bringing buyers and editors over and getting the message out about India. I was bringing it back and wearing it all the time, and making everybody was taking notice. I think IMG has still kept its ground with Lakme, and Lakme Fashion Week in Mumbai is still a very special fashion week to me and to the company. Over the last 10 years, I've seen the interest in India grow exponentially. Certainly from various different fashion perspectives. In that many of the global brands around the world now have recognized that India is a potential market with a lot of money and a lot of style and a lot of people wearing clothing and buying great stuff. So they're all coming over there. The frustration for me is I want all of that money being invested in global brands going to India to be invested in Indian brands to go globally. And I've seen the talent grow. I've seen people, get better and better. I haven't seen a huge change in the market. I can't say that many of those designers have taken that next step and leap. I think that many of them want to, but they just don't. And they just don't have the capitalization and the infrastructure to become international brands and to really sell worldwide. Indian fashion's always been around, and people have always been conscious of Indian fashion, India, and for all the things India is known for. Its colors, its prints, its embellishments, its beading. There's not a designer working in the world that doesn't manufacture and have their beading and all their work done in India. So it's very much a part of that. But there's a certain refinement that designers worldwide then use and make in India that's somewhat different than the way designers in India do it for Indian market. So there's a very fine line. Many of the designers are doing clothing for Anthropology and stores like that, and many mass companies produce and manufacture in India. And for many, many years it's been mostly seen as more of the inexpensive, hippie kind of tie-dye and fun, clothes, and the peasant skirts and the kurtas and the cheap embroidered tops. But there's also it goes up to that wedding clothing and all the really beautiful, magnificent work. So I think people are aware of all of that. And I think if more of it were available here, I think people would gravitate to it. People like Naeem Khan have made their business here in America. His dress for Mrs. Obama was a great breakthrough, and it was great for him. And I adore Naeem, and I think he's an enormous talent. And it's nice to see him taking what is similar to things you almost see in India, the embroideries and the workmanship, but he's refined it to a whole new place. I've tried very hard in my constant pressure on the Indian designers to stand their ground and stay, don't lose ground to the LVMHs and the PPRs of the world who are coming in and taking your turf. And I think it's up to the Indian media, press, publications to really celebrate the Indian talent and designers. But again, the magazines, they all get their advertising dollars from the big Western, companies. So they have to keep a balance. But India is one of those few countries where there really is an absolute style and look that is unique and that Indian women can wear and not look like they're in costumes. Saris, not going to go anywhere. Thank God, there still exists that. In most countries, when you see people in what would be the national dress, it looks like a national holiday, and that's not the case in India. In February, we had our last Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week here in the tents in Bryant Park. And for me, it was very much a celebration of so many of the things that were so fabulous about what we accomplished here in this very location. And it felt very much like closure for me, even though I'd been working for the last couple of years on the shift to Lincoln Center and the move for Fashion Week, which will happen in September. And so I spent a lot of time traveling around the world, meeting lots of people, working in this industry, and not just in the fashion industry. I have a long career behind me. And many people are always asking me for advice and help and advising them on things. And I said, I think it's just, it felt right. It's all about timing and the planets and everything. And all my charts said, this is it.